but they're being used, as people always say. But what's the actual Christian response? Give them a cup of water? Is that it?
Well, it kind of makes me think of what you mentioned earlier, James. What is the West? Like what's our core value? And that kind of leads us into that. And what I would contend is it's that the human person has dignity. You know that 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 a lot of these World Economic Forum people, they view the economy as being the kind of like source and summit of civilization. So and because of their kind of their philosophical views and outlook on life, they want to assert their will over the economy, and it's this weird thing. uh but as Christians, we recognize that human beings, just by right of being an incarnational creature, that human beings have a right to to a decent living, to a decent life, to a family, to their place in the world, to own property. These are all things that grew out of Christendom, out of our out of our shared origin. The West. Like, you have all these different peoples and countries and everything that all kind of sprung out of the primordial ooze of what Christ left us with. Um, and unfortunately, in rejecting Christ, we have in the West rejecting Christ, it's rejected the very thing that oriented the West toward what made the West the West. You know, the whole orientation, the whole orientation toward the dignity of the human person. And that's where I think, really, when you get down to the micro level, that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with these immigrants that, or we're dealing with these people that are crossing the border, asylum seekers, illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, whatever you want to call them. They're crossing the border, and then they're being trucked into cities all over the country, and they're displacing local people. And it's not just displacing them geographically, but it's also economically displacing them. It's they're coming in, they're willing to work for very, very low wages, and it's having a real impact on the ability of families to survive and to just make it, financially.
And they're not
Yeah, I
coming.
think
Oh, go ahead.
Whatever.
no, I
Oh,
was just
sorry.
going to mention that the term economy in Greek, right, means family. Economia means family, right? And it's
Mm.
interesting that, has there been a time where the world wasn't ran by oligarchs?
Yeah.
There's always a small band of people, usually with familial ties, that run things, right? It's almost like, I don't think there's a way to get away from that. It's just that it's kind of the way the world works. And what kind of came to mind in talking about this economic warfare and talking about these refugees being bussed in and displacing families, economic warfare means family warfare, right? At the top, the oligarchs are fighting, but at the bottom,
Mm.
they're making us fight familially, right, with different groups and whatnot. It's interesting to note that I sent this quote over here. There was a CNN piece of how the Orthodox Church in America is being a front for Russia and whatnot. And Father Seraphim Rose, who was a American Orthodox future saint, he wrote a book called I forgot what it was called, but his kind of dedication said, "This book is dedicated to the Christian martyrs today in Russia, tomorrow in America." Right. So do you think we are in something similar to what happened in the USSR, or in Russia, actually, before the USSR in the early 1900s, right? Where we're seeing this influx of this communism, this Bolshevik kind of mentality is taking over, and this idea, and even, I'm not a huge fan, but I read some of his work. Alexander Dugin says, the United
Mm.
States is the darkest place in the world right now. And who do you think is freer right now, a Russian or someone in the United States? For that to even be a question is something else. And I would argue that, at least, there's a certain type of, tyrannical power that oversees you in somewhere like Russia. Right here, you think you're free, or it's appearance of freedom, but you're actually less free, and becoming less free at a rapid pace. So I don't know. There's a lot there.
I want to know from both of you if it's about having the gospel that opens up the path for liberty and low time preference and prosperity and trusting your neighbor and not being collectivist, how come Central America, which is largely Catholic, and Russia, which is largely Orthodox, why is it surprising that the comparison of freedom between Russia and America could be so made right now? Like, if their inheritance is Christianity, why did that flower bloom a level of liberty on something that would make it not surprising that Russians could enjoy freedoms that Americans don't have? Why are we surprised? And the same thing for Central America. If they're, and South America, they're always going from a communist to a fascist. And it's the quick answer, just say, yeah, American foreign policy installs which one. Okay, that might be it. But there also has to be a kind of cultural fertility to these strongman dictatorships going back and forth between socialism and fascism. That seems to be fertile ground in Central and South America. But yet those countries have had, Catholic foundations. They're largely Catholic and Orthodox. Again, going back to Russia, just to be fair, a very historically Christian culture. Why is it that those traditions have not produced a level of individual personhood in their consciousness of the public? Like, for example, in Russia, you get 5 years, they say, if you speak against the war effort, right? In prison. That would be insane to consider that in America. What is it about America's Christianity that makes that, or the America's Christian inheritance that makes that shocking? But in Russia's Christian inheritance, 5 years for speaking out against the war, it's like, yeah, what's Russia? And the same thing for Central America, because they have similar policies that are kind of strong man policies or whatever.
So Central America and the Caribbean and South America, there have been battles raging down there. Really, I said the mid 19th century before. And I'm gonna put on a tinfoil hat here, but I guess not really. If you go and look at the revolutions in Mexico, like during the late 1800s, you can Google the cristeros. They were Christians that were fighting against the Freemasonic and communists that had staged a coup and overthrew the legitimate Mexican government. And they actually wrote into they made their constitution anti-Christian. And still to this day, the Mexican Constitution, it's still technically anti-Christian. They settled on a truce in the 1930s. It's a really similar thing when you start looking at that whole part of the world. Remember that that a lot of the leaders of the United States Confederacy, they were part of a secret society that was called Knights of the Golden Circle. And the Golden Circle meant the American South going over to Mexico, Central America, and circling the Caribbean. And the Knights of the Golden Circle, that was a Masonic group. They were Gnostics. They were not Christians. And what their goal was to eliminate the vestiges of Christianity and replace it with economics as being the source and summit of all the meaning in the society, but removing family from economy. Which, James, you blew my mind whenever you brought up whenever you said that economia, or how do you say it in Greek?
Yeah, economia. Yeah,
well,
the root word of economy. Yeah.
So is that a word that you can't really make sense of without understanding without the family connotation?
No, it's directly rooted to the kind of family connotation. The idea from the from the ancient West was like the economy is the broader family of a nation, right? So you and your family, that's your economy, which is the kind of the movement of resources, not just financial, between people, right? And that scales up to the larger level. But I think it's interesting to think of it in those terms, and then to see what's happening to families and the destruction of the family for economic reasons. It's really kind of it's really something else, you know. And then, you know, back to your question, David, about, you know, is it